This kid is really insufferable, and it's because he's one of the most hopeless, dogmatic idiots I've ever seen in my life. So, here, let's watch it together.
Previous video I made, I said evolution is false, and that's just a fact. And
it's not a fact. No, it's scientifically known, like the shape of the Earth.
that wasn't even close to the main point of this video. And so instead of actually responding to the main points that I made in the video, people just spammed a bunch of comments. You say evolution is false? Ha ha ha. I know that everything that you say I can't take seriously now. So I just wanted to make this quick video proving that evolution isn't scientific. It's not.
Then why is it that all scientists, real scientists, disagree with you? Why is that? No, young Earth creationists who have PhDs from either diploma mills or PhDs in completely unrelated fields are not scientists that disagree with evolution.
A valid theory, and it is more so a religious presupposition that atheists hold. And it's honestly insane how easy it is to disprove the theory of evolution. I'm just going to give you two simple arguments. The second one is going to be much better than the first. Now, before I actually refute the theory of evolution, we just have to point out the obvious fact that atheists still cannot account for the origin of life itself.
Why is it on the atheists to do this? That's a little bit silly. So, kid, we don't need to know how life got started. You could literally believe that God the first life onto our planet, and literally everything we know about evolution would still be true, because evolution is not an account for the origin of life on this planet.
They know that they have absolutely no explanation for the first living organism that appeared on Earth. So
now, there are plenty of working models. It's not solidified like the same way that evolution is, but you're probably completely ignorant about all of it, but you could look into RNA world hypotheses, the amyloid world hypotheses, many others. These people pretend that, scientists have no idea. No, you don't have any idea. There are tons of things that scientists know and are working on toward all of this. So it's just amazing. It's such a cliche, but the Dunning-Kruger-ness here is just, it's wild.
So of course they ask, not in these words, but they ask for us to give them one miracle, which is life from non-life.
No, life literally comes from non-life all the time. Life is chemistry. There's not a single thing about life that is reducible to anything other than chemistry. A miracle does not occur when DNA is copied. A miracle does not occur when ATP is, used and recycled within the cell. Every single thing that every living thing does is molecules in motion. It's chemistry. That would have been the type of process that would have formed the first life in the first place, because that's literally all that life is.
In order to kickstart their theory of evolution, if you just give us one cell, one instance of life coming from non-life, which we cannot explain, then we can start talking about evolution here. That's where the theory comes from. So right off the bat, this whole theory of evolution is just a dodge. And it is well known that the theory of evolution was popularized by people who were trying to undermine the biblical account of creation. That's literally the motivation for it.
It's literally not. Charles Darwin was actually going to be a priest. I don't know if he went to seminary school or exactly what kind of formal training he did, but he decided to become a naturalist. At one point, he was going to be a lawyer, I think, too. But no, it had nothing to do with, this is just brain-dead conspiratorial thinking. Kent Hovind must be this guy's hero. But no, the idea that people sat around and were like, me hatest God, me must come up with own theory. No, that's not how any of this happened. People followed the evidence. People of sound mind and who don't have their thinking done for them by crappy old books were able to look at the evidence and decide what it says. You, kid, I don't know what your name is. This should be humiliating for you, but I know that it isn't because your brain doesn't work. This is exactly what flat earthers do. They call themselves the real Christians, the real biblical literalists, and they say that all of the science that tells us that the earth is not flat isn't true, despite the overwhelming evidence. Their dogmatism is exactly the same kind of dogmatism that you use. And again, you're not going to be capable of understanding that because you think you're special and that you're right, but you just aren't.
Might not be the motivation for some people today, but that was the original motivation. And it wasn't even scientific to begin with.
It was always scientific. You pose a naturalistic question that is in principle able to be tested, and that is scientific. It's absolutely scientific. It presupposes no miracles or anything like that. It's absolutely scientific. At the time, they probably wouldn't have known exactly really how to test it, but that doesn't make it not scientific. Except they actually did know how to test it, because Charles Darwin looked at the fossil record and the anatomy of organisms, and he said, it really looks like birds and theropod dinosaurs, or birds are highly derived theropod dinosaurs. Theropod dinosaurs are their ancestors. So we should find some sort of intermediate. And lo and behold, in Charles Darwin's own lifetime, after he published his book, we found one, Archaeopteryx, and we have found many more since then.
The science part of it came along later with Darwin. It started out, and honestly still is today, a philosophical idea rather than a scientific one.
He doesn't describe what the hell this means. Evolution is a philosophical idea. But I've heard other people make that point and never really explain it. Again, it's not philosophical. It's literally an idea that can be tested. If species have changed over time, and if all life on the planet is related, then that can be investigated. The organisms of the past should be different than the organisms of the present, and they are. All life on this planet should be related, and it is. The degree to which they are related should correlate highly with the way that organisms were systematically classified hundreds of years ago, before we had the ability to really confirm all of this. And guess what? All of that passed with flying colors.
Can be observed and proven. Second thing I have to point out before I completely refute evolutionary theory is that we are talking about history here. If you want to know what happened in the past, who lived in the past, the primary source that we have to use is eyewitness testimony. If you want to find out
What an absolutely idiotic thing to say. Did a meteorite strike a remote place of the earth where nobody lives? Well, we found a crater. Herder, but if there's no story, then it didn't happen. This is the guy is just such an unserious thinker.
Washington did, you don't go looking at his bones. If you want to know what happened to George Washington, you don't go looking at his bones. You don't dig up his dead body to find out.
Yeah, you absolutely do.
That's not the primary source.
Yes, George Washington is the primary source of George Washington. So, this is just so funny. I wonder if this guy believes the cherry tree story. So, not that long after George Washington died, Mason Weems, I think his name was, he published that hagiography of George Washington that said he chopped down the cherry tree and that he threw a silver dollar over the Potomac River. Well, guess what? The river at Washington's childhood home is a mile wide, so that didn't happen. The cherry tree, there's literally zero evidence that ever happened. It's just completely made up. Now, let's say that this didn't happen, but let's say somebody claims that George Washington was 7 feet tall. Okay, do we go look at his body to prove that? Because according to this guy, his bones are not the primary source for that claim. The person making the claim is the primary source. As if there are so many problems with what's happening here. First of all, you just proved that every mythology in the history of Earth is true by just saying that this is how it works, and without taking it any more seriously than that, which is hilarious because the guy doesn't believe that. So anyways, but yeah, also we know for a fact that eyewitness testimony is the most unreliable form of evidence that exists. So The
Primary source is always going to be what people told about him. And so the most common accusation against
and people don't lie
Christians is
or make mistakes or, well, this would be a mistake, but repeat what other people said but get the details wrong.
that, oh, you're anti-science, you're anti-this, you're anti-that.
You are.
No.
Yes, you are.
We are against your science and your ideas about what happened in the past.
Evolutionary science is not a different kind of science. It works exactly the same way. It operates under the principle of naturalism. It makes predictions, and those predictions have come true, unlike you, unlike your worldview.
Even though you weren't there to observe it. Now, here's the deal. Let's get into this. Even if we were there to observe evolution, even if humans could have a bird's eye view of all of human history, and they say it's billions of years, but biblically, of course, it's much less than that.
Which is how we know the Bible is false.
Even if we could have a bird's eye view, watching the world and all of evolution throughout billions of years, even if we could view that, evolution would still be a false theory. So,
even if we watched evolution happen, it would still be false.
For the sake of the argument, let's just grant the atheist one miracle. Okay, there's a single-celled organism. It came into existence somehow. They can't explain it. It's a miracle. Let's say.
No, that's not what miracles are. Not knowing something doesn't mean it's a miracle. Lightning never was a miracle. Ignorant people, there we go. Ignorant people thought it was, but it never was. And you are ignorant people.
Say that that's true, okay? According to the theory of evolution, that one single blob of life over millions upon millions of years through completely natural processes transformed into gorillas, giraffes, you, broccoli, fish, flying.
Yeah, so look at the genetics, because that was the idea. Evolutionary biologists, before we could test if things are related, which is how life works, if evolution is true and all life is related, it became broccoli and giraffes and people, right? Then they would all be related, and the degree to which they're related would match the categories they were placed into based on appearances and anatomy and all that stuff. And it, again, I already said this, but it passed with flying colors. So the scientific test for your claim has been done so many times, and it passed the test.
Flying fish. Have you seen those videos of flying fish? The amount of diversity that we see in the world is absolutely amazing, but that's the idea.
Yes, and could not possibly have come out of a few species that were on an ark. It's genetically impossible.
Essentially, Darwin said that the organisms,
And the boat's like literally impossible too.
which are best suited to adapt to the environment, will survive and propagate more, and the organisms which are less suited to survive the environment will die out, and of course they'll go extinct. Now at this point, there's actually a second miracle that we would have to grant to the atheist for the
What? Man, I mean, he got something right, and then he started doing this. I was almost impressed for 3 seconds.
this theory, and that would be the miracle that these organisms, which are not conscious yet, somehow are trying to survive, and that it's somehow beneficial for its own species to keep going on. I mean, that's literally the origin of the word natural selection. It's nature doing the choosing. We have an unconscious entity choosing things.
Okay, well, now, like, you literally, buddy, you need to write down what you're going to say before you say it, because you gave a completely garbled argument here. First of all, how do the organisms know how to survive? And then he just switched to, how did the process grant consciousness to allow the organisms to know or desire or whatever how to survive? That I was prepared to address that. And then he just went into, no, natural selection does the thinking for you. So for the first thing, not to, like, I could talk at length about this, but I don't really have to. Kid, you think that a zygote is a human being. I actually think it's a human being too. There we go. There's some middle ground. Is a zygote conscious? If a zygote is conscious, it is conscious in no more meaningful way than an algae, a single-celled algae is conscious, or a bacteria is conscious, or the egg before it was fertilized was conscious, or the sperm before it fertilized the egg was conscious. In other words, it's consciousness, like the degree or sophistication of its consciousness, is nothing at all like, you or me today, although we at one point were that. So this consciousness is an emergent phenomenon out of sufficient complexity. Once an organism, which we can think of as a system because it's made of many interacting parts, becomes sufficiently complex, then a kind of conscious experience emerges, and the more complex it becomes, the more sophisticated the conscious experience. Nobody would think that, a parrot or a dog or a cat isn't conscious, completely lacks it. Do trees have it? I mean, I don't really think so. Talk to a panpsychist and they'll give you different kinds of ideas about like consciousness or whatever with trees. I mean, trees clearly have awareness of their environment. So what kind of conscious experience is that? What I guess I'm talking about at this point is I don't think trees have a mind, but they may be conscious in some way. So let's not belabor that too much here. And then the second thing, it's nature that does the selecting. Let's listen to, I'll back up a little bit and we'll try to catch what his problem with that is.
Nature doing the choosing. We have an unconscious entity choosing things, making decisions. Okay. So once again,
Right. So we'll just take the simplest idea. Antibiotic resistant bacteria. Okay. The bacteria don't choose their environment. They don't choose whether or not they'll be resistant. The presence of the antibiotic particles, molecules, whatever we want to call them, is what decides who lives and who dies, and who has better chances, therefore, of reproducing. There's no problem. What could be... obviously, he thinks there's a problem, but I don't see what the problem could possibly be. This might be the best representation of evolution, and especially like the modern concept of like cladistical phylogenetic evolution I've ever seen. What this is a bunch of bacteria on a slide, and they grew it from either side. So the bacteria started off on the far left side and the far right side. And you can see these pretty distinct lines. That's because at intervals, they increase the strength of it's either strength or concentration, which it's probably both actually, of the antibiotics at every step. And so what we see is mass proliferation of the bacteria, but then mass extinction events. However, from those mass extinction events, a few survivors poke through and they radiate and diversify. This is exactly what you see when you look at evolutionary diagrams. So you see diversification, proliferation, and then every now and then we see complete extinction from this. This exact same thing we can see happening here. And yeah, at every step, like look at this. You can't really see my here, let me fix that so you can see my cursor. We had this group here and they survived the extinction, and then there was this mass proliferation, but then another extinction event occurs, and look at that. From that stalk, look at how many different groups or whatever came off of it, and one of them just happened to be more successful than all the others. But there are lots of end branches on this tree of life too, but inevitably some of them make it through. So this is it's a gorgeous and perfect illustration of natural selection.
Let's grant them that miracle, that nature is making decisions.
Not a miracle. You're just an idiot.
So once again,
like substitute my lack of knowledge for just saying herder miracle. And the other hilarious thing about this is what you're doing is saying that things that can't be explained are miracles, but really what they are is stupid. So in other words, miracle is just a stand-in for what you consider to be stupid. Okay? All of your miracles are stupid then.
As atheists, they cannot deny that they are just as religious as Christians are and everyone else. They worship nature. Nature makes a choice.
No, we don't worship nature. Again, this should humiliate you, but it won't because you're too stupid and dog-headed and dogmatic to understand it. But flat earthers say exactly what you're saying. They call us global sexuals, which is actually really hilarious. They say we worship the globe religion. They say we worship science for all the same reasons that you do, just applied to a different thing in nature.
Choices. I'm here because of nature. Nature created me. Nature did this. Nature did that. It's nature. Nature is their God. Now, the moment you've been waiting for. This is the killer of the theory of evolution. This is the
Oh yeah, we haven't got to his good argument yet.
thorn in the side of every evolutionist. The reason why the theory is a false theory, it cannot work, is because it, by definition, is untestable, unobservable, and of course, unprovable. This is
Literally false. I mean, I already explained to you all the reasons why what you just said is false. Let's see if we can explain this in slightly different terms. If something happened in the past, then what you can do is you can come up for a naturalistic explanation for what happened and predict the evidence. All of that has happened multiple times. And the great thing about evolution, another thing that makes it so strong, is it's interdisciplinarily, there we go, confirmed and consistent. Radiometric dating confirms and does not contradict anything we know about the theory of evolution. This is sort of going to combine the idea of like the Big Bang and an ancient Earth and so on and so forth with evolution all together, which is what these guys always do anyways. So if our modern secular ideas about Earth, the universe, and life are true, then Earth can't be older than the universe, and it isn't. Literally 100% of our evidence says that the universe is vastly older than the Earth is. This guy has this really moronic video about why he thinks the Earth is 6,000 years old. I'm going to play just a little bit of it toward the end, but basically, because Bible say so. That's his entire argument. So the Earth cannot be older than the universe, and it isn't, not even close. Life can't be older than the planet itself, and it isn't. It isn't even close. Also, life on this planet would necessarily have progressed through stages, and it clearly did, because no dinosaur fossil has been dated to or found mixed among the remains of any trilobite fossil, for example. No, recent mammalian form has ever been found mixed among dinosaur remains. Never has, and it never will. We have millions of these things. It is confirmed at this point to anybody's satisfaction, any reasonable satisfaction. Way back in the 1800s, all the names of these geographical or geological layers. Man, my word game is not really on point today. The Devonian, Permian, Cambrian, Cenozoic, Jurassic, Triassic, whatever. Those were all named and placed in chronological order many decades, or up to a century before we had any idea how to test how old they really are. Just like with evolution, the organisms were put into groups before we had any idea how to tell to what degree they are related. And anyways, none of those layers are misplaced, as is confirmed by the radiometric dating. Now, what these people do is they just simply dismiss that data and say that it has flaws, although it doesn't, or it's built on assumptions or whatever. Literally, we cannot operate in the world and make any sense of it unless we have some assumptions, some a priori things or axioms or presuppositions, whatever you want to call them. We all have them. But the deal is, with evolution and the naturalistic idea and ancient Earth, every single one of those presuppositions are always consistent with each other. If these ideas were false, if radiometric dating was false, if evolution was false, if the secular account for why the geologic column is arranged the way it is, if all of those underlying assumptions were false, which is one of the possibilities, then that data can't correlate with each other. It cannot be cross-disciplinarily confirmed, except it is to a remarkable degree. Here's just an example. We have tree rings, radiocarbon dating, and sediment layers. 3 different things plotted against each other, and the correlation of the data is 0.999, or it looks like a graph that is 0.999. all of this data agrees with itself. Again, what dog-headed and hair-brained and dogmatic stupid people like this guy do is they say, well, let's add in an additional piece of data, the Bible. The Bible's the only thing that doesn't disagree or that doesn't agree with all of the data that we have. Therefore, all of the data that we have is false. There is no hope for idiots like this.
This is because there is no way to independently verify whether or not a certain organism will be better fit to survive than other organisms, other than simply looking at which organism survived. A similar kind.
Wow. So this is a very classic misunderstanding of, well, it's not even a misunderstanding of evolution. It's kind of a misunderstanding of the limits of human cognition or something like that. Because, well, it's not really that. It really just is actually a misunderstanding of evolution. Because if evolution doesn't have a teleology, then it's false. Again, these people are incapable of looking at the world in any kind of objective sense. The world must reflect what I think is rational and intuitive. Human intuition is really bad for quite a lot of things, which is why we need science and mathematics. So, yeah, evolution is false because we don't know what will survive until after natural selection has taken its course. What is the angle here? Is he trying to say that it's not reproducible or repeatable, therefore not science, because we can't do it that way, because he's going to claim everything is post hoc or something? If the evidence only exists in the past, then all we're ever doing is reinterpreting the evidence. That's quite a stupid claim.
Kind of theory would be a theory that says all of the best presidents are named George Washington. That's something that we can test out. Let's take all the best presidents.
Yes. Do something that's completely subjective and use that as your example, your analogy.
And find out whether or not their names are George Washington. What we can't do is look at all the best presidents and automatically assume that their names are George Washington. And this is what the theory of evolution does. These are the ones that have survived, therefore they were the most fit to survive. And so,
I mean, no shit, dummy. But we could just take a look at the bacteria experiment that I showed you earlier and do that in real time. We aren't looking at the past when we do that. I mean, we kind of are, but we're setting up an experiment for the future. The experiment runs its course, and then we look at the data when we're done. I mean, this idea that if we look at data, which always has to be data of events that have already occurred, then we're not doing science.
So it's essentially survival of the survivors. Basically, anytime you want to come up with a theory to relate one thing to another thing, you have to be able to independently verify these things. And
you know what we could do? I mean, maybe we could test this to his satisfaction. Go and get a tropical plant and then go put it in the Arctic and see if it survives. Science, evolution would predict that it doesn't. What does your Bible predict? It literally predicts nothing at all. What these idiots will do is they'll say, oh, well, you're messing with God's creation and that's why it didn't work. Okay. Why was your God so stupid as to create species that live in one place that when they get taken to another place, invasive species, which we know tons of, not only do they thrive, but they absolutely ruin the ecology of that environment? Your God was the one dumb enough to do that. In evolution, this makes sense because the environment, like any animal, if the temperatures are the same and plants are diverse, but if you're just going to eat plants, then there are plenty of sources for that. Some organisms are really picky, like koalas, but quite a lot of them are not. Or if you're a predator, meat is meat for the most part. There aren't very many predators that are hyper-specific and picky. So they can end up in a different environment, but because they have no natural predators or whatever for that environment, then their fitness is vastly greater than other organisms.
And the evolutionists know this. This is why it's a thorn in their side. They cannot answer this. We hear all sorts of examples
It's a completely stupid criticism
of evolution in middle school and high school. One would be a group of wolves in North America, in Canada or whatever. There's a pack of wolves over here and a pack of wolves over here. Similar environment. This pack of wolves has bigger legs and they can run faster and they're more athletic. They can catch the prey easier. And so they're going to take more of the food supply. They're going to propagate more. And so they're more fit. And that's why they're going to beat out the other wolves here who are less developed. They have smaller legs that can't run as fast. This is an attempt at independently verifying a species that is better to adapt to a certain environment. Now, this utterly fails, laughably so, because we have observed.
What the hell was that example? That didn't go anywhere. There are wolves in different places, and in one place they have big legs, and the other they're different. That's a failure of what?
Observed using real science rather than coming up with fairy tales, that animals are extremely complex. They have a lot of different moving parts, hearts, lungs, legs, all of it goes together. And so we've seen things like this happen in the real world where organisms with better muscles, running faster, more athletic in general, it puts more strain on the heart and the lungs. They have to be able to breathe better and everything, right? And so actually it might cause them to be worse off. It might cause them to have a heart attack. It's more strain. And so how are we going to find out which pack of wolves is most fit to survive in the environment? Well, which one survives in the environment. The only way to find out which organism is most fit to survive is looking at which one survives. So ignoring all of the miracles that we have to grant to the...
Okay, I guess that was but again, this is just completely stupid. All he's doing here is saying, well, all we do is look at the results of the evolutionary process taking place. Therefore, evolution isn't science. This is not an argument.
Evolutionists and the obvious malicious motives of the people who came up with this theory, it still just doesn't work. It's hilarious, actually. But this is what you get when you don't trust in Yahweh with all your heart and you lean on your own understanding.
Yes, so literally flaunting the idea of don't think. And if evidence betrays what you already believe in with regard to your mythology, then just discount that evidence, even though you accept this kind of form of evidence, what you can see with your own eyes and what people talk about, literally all the time for everything, except for when it interferes with your mythology. Believe in the most fantastical claims about black holes and stuff at the microscopic scale, the double slit experiment. None of that is a problem because it doesn't threaten your precious superstition.
God said, trust in Yahweh with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Ignorant fools despise wisdom and discipline. Now,
yeah, the people who wrote that thought the earth was flat, so congratulations. Well, they may not have thought the earth was flat, but they thought that the sun orbited the earth. Although, yeah, we don't know. This guy might be a geocentrist for all we know.
Now, the number one way that we know evolution is false is because of Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days...
Okay, like we'll go over this, but another problem you have here, kid, is these are literally just claims. You have no evidence and you have no reasoning. Literally just claims. Evolution makes claims, but we have evidence and reasoning. We have the fossil record, and we have genetics, and we have countless other things, and we have countless other disciplines that all confirm, and none of them contradict the evolutionary story, or whatever we want to call it. This is literally just a claim, and you know that none of the evidence supports it, which is why you have to say, yeah, but don't trust your own understanding. Trust what the words in this horrible book are.
Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. The best argument against evolution is simply this. Evolution requires billions of years of, change and survival of the fittest, and the parents of the first humans weren't actually human, and all sorts of other...
There were no first humans. There's never the first of anything. It's like, who was the first modern English speaker? There never was. It's microscopic variations of languages that are already spoken, or a language family that is already spoken by a group. Now, at one point, almost the entire vocabulary changes, and we have the words we say today, which were not the words that were spoken in the medieval period in, England, where English, kind of sort of comes from. So again, but once again, the theist literally can't stop thinking of evolution in terms of Pokemon.
Complete nonsense. Evolution contradicts the Bible, and we know the Bible is true.
No, we don't know that.
Therefore,
in fact, according to the Bible isn't true because it's replete with horrible contradictions.
or evolution is false. That's the best argument. That's the argument that I typically give. And you can see why a lot of people don't like it. It's because they hate God's word, but God's word is true. I say this so that no one will delude you with
Oh, yeah, no, you literally can't do anything with idiots like this. He's got this other thing here. Let's listen to this.
When it comes to people who deny Genesis as historical, they obviously aren't Christians. They don't believe in God's word. But as for the people...
So he's talking about people that think that evolution is true but believe in God. They're not Christians.
Who make it out to be this metaphorical thing that it's so hard to understand. Many of them don't hold to biblical infallibility. They teach that the Bible has flaws in it. So once again...
We know for a fact that it has flaws. I was literally talking about this with Justin last night, but I can't remember. Well, it's in two different books in the Old Testament, but God talks about he's going to bring 3 years of famine, 3 months of war, and 3 days of like Yahweh bringing the sword against you. And he says like, you can pick which one of these you want. And then in a different book, it says 7 years of famine, 3 months of war, and 3 days of the sword. So obviously, according to the Bible isn't true because it wasn't 3 and 7 years of famine. King Saul dies in two completely different ways. Well, one of them was lying. It doesn't say one of them was lying. It's just that everybody knows that the Bible disagrees with itself here. So you have to just retroactively say that's what happened. I have, no kidding, run into the argument before that there's this part in the New Testament where Paul is talking about like a high priest or somebody who is buried somewhere, and he gets either the name of the priest or the location of the burial wrong. I don't remember exactly what it is. But I brought this up to somebody. This was years ago. It's stuck with me because of how incredible it was. And they said, it's obviously wrong because the Old Testament says, gives one account, and then Paul's writings gives a different account. They said, no. Paul is wrong, but somebody wrote down faithfully what Paul literally said, so the Bible is still inerrant. There's literally nothing you can do with these idiots. They have a conclusion, and the conclusion will always be satisfied and reinforced, no matter what. They're hopeless. They're useless.
Again, who are you going to listen to? Are you going to listen to God, what he spoke, that he made the heavens and the earth in 6 days? Or are you going to listen to the interpretations of these men who don't even believe that God's word is infallible?
100% guarantee that this guy thinks that there are parts of the Bible that are metaphorical. So, Pumpkin, why do you get to do that arbitrarily, but other people don't get to?
Is perfect. And once again, according to Jesus, the scripture cannot be broken. That's John chapter 10, by the way. So when it comes to the age of the universe, how the universe came to be, this is something that happened in the past. There is no scientific experiment that I could do to find out what happened in the past. A supernatural...
Yes, actually there is. This is how forensics works. It's actually literally how everything works, because everything you have ever seen before is the result of information in the form of photons striking your retina. So you literally only experience the past. So let me invent a religion that says the universe was created right now, or 9 nanoseconds ago. And literally everything is just the creation of an all-powerful God that made everything appear that way. And it also imbued with you the memories and thoughts and information that you have about the world. It appears the way it does, but it's actually 9 nanoseconds old. That is equally as stupid as saying that the Earth is 6,000 years old, despite 100% of the evidence we have disagreeing with that. That's really all I can stand from this curly-headed fuck. So I'll see all of you tomorrow.